And please take your seats. And now we will make some conclusions in the Media Center of Reforms, and we are going to have a press briefing, and now we are going to speak about the results of the Antimonopoly Committee of Ukraine. And I want to remind that for several times they work with the new personnel, new staff, and they work they are really active, and they decide a lot of problematic issues for business that are important for business. And I would like to invite the head of the Antimonopoly Committee, Yuriy Terentiev. Good day. I would like to make some conclusions of this week, because it was fruitful regarding our work, and then I would like to inform you on the nearest future and the approaches that we use in our activity, and what approaches we are going to use in a broader and more effective way. The biggest result is that we make an end of the story that lasted for 10 years, and was the transparency of fines, and this topic was actively discussed, and it was typical to blame an anti-monopoly committee for non-transparent ways. So a legislature provide a high
Штраф може доходити у таких випадках до 10% річної виручки такого підприємства. Але, звичайно, є і, скажімо так, менші за своєю протиправністю порушення, за інтенсивністю протиправності порушення, як такі, що стосуються недобросовісної конкуренції, чи режиму концентрації, отримання дозволу на концентрацію, чи інформаційні порушення щодо
the interference with Antimonopoly Committee. The most typical accusation of Antimonopoly Committee was the following: that for the same infringement, one subject would receive the fine of 50 million hryvnias, the other would receive fine of 50,000 hryvnias. And also, for unclear reasons, the subject that would receive 50 million fine in 2-3 months, the committee would make decision to review the fine, and the fine would go from 50 million to 100,000 hryvnias. So in fact, this was a black box. But now these approaches that we have introduced are similar to approaches that are working in European Union, that European Commission uses, and in several cases we consciously went to even more limitation, self-limitation than that of European Commission, to go into more detailed fine definition for specific infringements. Our approach will be based on what we will review as we look at basic fine, specifically understanding relevant market size, talking about the market of infringement, talking about more simple picture than turnover related directly or indirectly to the infringement. So in the cases of large infringements, most significant crimes against competition legislation, like cartel agreements, that up to 45% of the volume of infringement of the market, and 35% in the case of monopoly states, because subjects need to understand that this is the level of fine that would be possible for certain infringement, because on one hand, some punishments that are not proportional, they can destroy the company, while small fines are actually supporting monopoly and lack of competition, because the company would rather keep paying fines and breaking legislation. So this new approach would be balanced, and we'll see how it would work. In the next months, 3-4 months, we will analyze the implementation stage of our recommendation explanations, because no doubt in more midterm perspective we can talk about methodologies that would become secondary legislation. This document can come in the middle of next year. We are ready to work according to these transparent standards. Also, I'd like to say that quite typical abuse subject, or at least accusation against Antimonopoly Committee was done concerning the information abuse, when Antimonopoly Committee would demand a lot of information and then fine for unprecise or unclear or unsatisfactory or insufficient information, and fines could be up to 1% of yearly turnover. And this situation had very high corruption risks, because the possibility of assigning such a fine was quite negative for the company. So we have developed very transparent table of specific liability for specific infringement in information domain, and in majority cases there are fixed fines for every infringement. So if we are talking about infringements in informational domain that is done consciously, intentionally, to interfere with Antimonopoly Committee's activities with intent to stop investigation, then Antimonopoly Committee has a right to step away from the charter of fines and assign more severe fine. And in addition to basic fine, which is percentage of relevant turnover of goods, the size of fine can increase or decrease by 50% depending on graving or facilitating circumstance, like stop of infringement, cooperation with Antimonopoly Committee, that would be facilitating circumstance, while fighting Antimonopoly Committee and objections would make the situation grave and the fine would increase. So, applying these recommendations on Wednesday is a result of our long and intense work over the last 3 months. And in fact, we removed the main objections and complaints against an Antimonopoly Committee over the last 10 years. Other important issues to clarify. So last 3 months, it's very high example, because the discussion has been happening for 10 years, where the fines were not assigned properly. And I understand that you were working with legal circles and market representatives that supported this discussion. Yes, that's true. We have heard many positive statements from the market, because they could not imagine 2 or 3 years ago the possibility of such open and professional discussion on these problems. And it's good to demonstrate that we can hear and consider their arguments and then reflect them in final documents. We need to find optimal balance of public interests, private interests, and consumer interests. So we hear all the arguments. We have involved the wide circle of experts. And our recommendation explanations were directed as a draft to European Commission and to Ukrainian legal firms, other international experts, and we have received some good comments from experts. Some comments were stating to improve the documents. This document is not made of stone. It will change. It will develop, and by the middle of next year, I think we'll have a new document that would take into account all the new practice, and this would be even approved by official methodology, which is secondary legislation. So I think this is good that this document is voluntary in fulfillment, but it's still good recommendation and understanding in cooperation. Yes, the new principle of our work is transparency and openness. The experience of the last 3 months demonstrates this clearly. For example, at the end of July, we have discovered that there is decision of National Council of Security and Defense about necessity of detailed analysis of transportation system. And after this news in media, without even waiting for official document from the National Security and Defense Council, we have started roundtable, and we have gathered more than 30 representatives of different agents in airfare and transportation, passenger companies, fuel companies, handling companies, all the chain of airlines business that influences the ticket price, airfare, was analyzed. And every key person that influences the decision could express their problems, share their concerns, accuse each other if necessary. But that discussion was healthy, correct, and Antimonopoly Committee must do such discussions regularly. So for the future, we plan to do these events to proactively solve the problems before they become statements on lack of economic competition. So we have sent such information requirements to all subjects of the market, and we are preparing packages of recommendations to different subjects, including airlines, state aviation service, handling companies, to develop better competition in this sector and each segment of airline business. This is a first example, how we study the market problem systematically, and this work was effective. Our task is not to give fines to business, but to provide high quality, low price services to make sure that business feels competition, because competition is life. Competition needs to be restored as soon as possible where certain problems exist, possibly. Another thing I'd like to add, that this week we had development on our investigation of energy markets. Yesterday we had the session of Antimonopoly Committee. You know the circumstances of this investigation. In the beginning of June we began comprehensive energy market in research, not just to include electricity, but the natural gas market, fuel market, distribution markets. for electricity and gas. This is comprehensive and labor-intensive work. Now we are getting preliminary results, and now we analyze this information, and in parallel with doing this investigation, we have done certain investigations based on certain complaints. For example, the tech group have made a statement about anti-competition actions of the government, specifically the National Commission on Regulation of Energy and Utility Services does not create a transparent utilities price setting that would make disadvantage for some subjects compared to others. So National Commission has addressed the Antimonopoly Committee of Ukraine to accuse the tech companies in their monopoly states and their infringements. We have investigated both statements and accusations in parallel, and as we analyze the statement by the tech, and after having received the information in our investigation yesterday, we have approved recommendations of the National Commission in regulation of energy and utility services to create mechanisms of transparent calculation of the market price and transparency of the system. The recommendations were received by the Commission, and they are supposed to review our recommendation and report back to us in 10 days. The tech required opening criminal proceedings, but the work of our Antimonopoly Committee is to create competitive state at the market, first of all. So giving recommendations to National Commission is, in our opinion, most effective way to solve problems in the market. At the same time, the National Commission has addressed the tech about the statement by the Commission to start investigation to check the accusations of National Commission against the tech companies. These are main issues on legislation development and our legal practice and law enforcement practice and investigation that Antimonopoly Committee does at this time. Colleagues, if you have questions, please. But I'd like to ask the question first about transparency of Antimonopoly Committee. The decision was made several months ago about the documents and activities, but at this time, the essence of recommendation in energy market, these investigations, will they be presented in some format? Will they be in open access? Because it's part of public discussion. How just are the tariffs for utilities and energy? These recommendations are part of public access information. We have certain requirements to publication of our decisions. We hope the Parliament will pass the laws that are in the Parliament session, to whether today or not, I'm not sure they're part of today's agenda, but one of those laws will oblige us to publish every decision, and it will remove all questions on what information is service use, limited use, and confidential. So these recommendations and their information will be published at the website. Another question. As we work on investigation related to the tech, the group of companies was formed in a way that Antimonopoly Committee participated in certain structure developments, and approvals were made by Antimonopoly Committee. Will those decisions be reviewed? Is there difficulty in your investigation created by previous practice of Antimonopoly Committee? We make comprehensive investigation of all energy business and issues, and as we analyze the activities of today, we raise the old cases as well. I personally am against reviewing decisions of previous decisions of Antimonopoly Committee unless there is a criminal offense in the process of making those decisions. Questions, please. Thank you. Yuriy, I have several questions about energy. That's most interesting for everyone, of course. But talking about yesterday's decision, your yesterday's session, was it public? The party to this decision, National Commission on Regulating, National Commission asked for closed session. What is so secret about that session that Commission asked to make it closed? It's hard for me to give an assessment of their request to make the session closed, but they asked to make it closed for more objective investigation. We have satisfied this request because, in fact, all questions related to these problems, on one hand, of course, should be known to society in the process of decision-making as well as decision-making. But we don't want to make a show out of the work of Antimonopoly Committee. We don't want to make this a platform for emotional political statements. We want to make our discussion a platform for a clear investigation. I know there is some dissatisfaction with closed nature of yesterday's session, but I think it was correct decision. What are your recommendations? Should they be considered, responded to? Yes, they must respond to our recommendation within 10 days. Of course, they cannot make legislation within 10 days or change existing, but they can tell us whether they agree with our suggested recommendation for problem solving. If they agree, then they need to tell us how they will follow the procedure. Or if they disagree, then they will give their counter recommendation. So there will be dialogue. We understand there are problems here. NERC believes that it's their right to approve the market price. Business believes that the mechanism of calculation should be transparent. Our fines can be up to 10%, but we make the public demonstration of how we make this decision. So let's wait for decision of NERC. You opened a new case today. Was it based on the session of today? Yesterday we received the statement on the rules of Antimonopoly Committee, and state commissioners have right to open the case. As a whole session of the committee, we have discussed, because it happened yesterday. It is very politically relevant and acute questions. So we have analyzed the circumstances that NERC refers to. We made a decision about sufficiency of grounds for review of the case and for opening of the case. So according to the right of the committee, the state commissioner can make decision without approval of the whole Antimonopoly Committee. But in this case, we all voted for the opening of the case. And it was that there are grounds for this investigation, and the case was opened by Commissioner today. the procedure? What is the terms of development of this case? When will we see some preliminary movements and final decisions? If it's not published yet, the decision of the Commission, what recommendations have you given? Can you give it to us? If not, if we don't go into motivation part, then we need to approve the order of forecasting wholesale market price based on the top coal price and understanding the constant expenses of generation subjects, and to develop the project of calculation of top market price to increase transparency, informing wholesale price and coefficient of NERC. We also have some positive and negative sides to transparency of decision making. Let's talk about intermediate results within 2 months. I'm not sure we'll finish or not, because in fact there could be different circumstances. Last question. Explain, please. You said the recommendations is a best way of solving problems to improve competition in the market. But why in the tech? You gave recommendations to NERC, but in case of NERC against the tech, you decided to start investigation. The tech against NERC. Their statement and their accusation, we cannot fine the state agency. We cannot give a fine to a state agency. But we need as soon as possible, if we are not saying that we see any infringement, we're not saying that NERC is making infringement, we see certain problems, and our recommendations are about forming more transparent mechanism of building market price. That's why we give these recommendations, NERC. And then discussion in legal field between us, NERC, and the tech will just delay the process. But specific recommendations will improve transparency and clarity of rules of the game. The tech, NERC against the tech. There the statement is about abuse of monopoly state. If there is a statement about abuse of monopoly state, then we need to define that there is in fact monopoly state and there is a chance of abuse. So we've seen the statement of NERC that lives many specific that gives many specific evidences that there is ground for opening the case, but of investigation. So we have opened investigation because the most effective way of influencing the state agency is recommendations to stop the allegations against DTEC and investigate the case at the market of energy. We have opened the case against DTEC. Energy historically is a problematic sector of the Ukrainian economy, and the problems in this sector are not just related to one specific group of company or regulator. There are many systemic problems that must be resolved, and more comprehensive recommendations, as in case of airplane and airfare business. We are working on it, and we are investigating the general problems and looking for solutions. Microphone, будь ласка. Microphone, будь ласка. Microphone, please. Colleagues, I can give a brief comment here. We are saying that when, according to Ukrainian legislation, we see a monopoly at the market, and that's 35% of the market. And if they have more than 35% of the market, they need to prove that they are living in competitive state. But market could has a structure that when you have 10 or 5% and still be key element of the system. So we're not stating that when I'm talking about thermal generation, but we talk about the whole generation of electric energy, and subjects with about 10% of general market, 10, 15, they still can have monopoly state to dictate the turnover conditions. And when certain actions are negatively assessed by NERC, these actions could have a negative influence on the market. So now we will investigate the statement by NERC and will conclude transparent and beneficial decision. We'll keep working and monitoring the activity of the Antimonopoly Committee, especially in the investigations of energy market. Thank you. Next briefing begins in several minutes. Thank you very much.